Hello, hello, hello. And if you had wanted to find out why it is important to know your target audience and your genre, then keep listening/watching to this video. Hi there, my name is Lisa Oliver. I am a self-published author in the romance, paranormal romance genre. I have written roughly 80 titles in the last 8 years, and they are all self-published, and I like to think they're all quietly pootling along and selling not that badly. I've started this channel in an effort to help you guys do the same, because I've been living off the income of my self-published books for the last 8 years. Now, once upon a time, like about 2 months ago, I started a book called The Infidelity Clause. The men in it weren't shifters, they weren't magic users, although Caspian was able to light a little flame off of his finger, which apparently was really useful for lighting a lady's cigarette, but that's about it. And it was one of those marriage contract books. I had never written one because I write fated mates. This is the first time I didn't write fated mates. I wrote about two men from two different countries, fictional countries, brought together in a contract, which was the way it was written. It was established. It was the norm amongst higher ranking peoples. And the whole point of the book was, well, I didn't really know, but I'd started writing it because it was a nagging idea that wouldn't leave me alone. And I had this idea for a cover that involved something along the lines of one of those old-time pirate ships with the big wooden ships. And, a man stepping off the gangplank onto the Gunkamal soil. But anyway, I wrote it, and as I say, it's some of the language is a little bit oldie-worldy. My daughter called it oldie-fashionedy. So it's like historical, but it's not historical because, of course, it's fictional, and it's not written about this world. So there is nothing really historical about it. It's just kind of implied. It's magical, but the world as well doesn't feature very heavily like a lot of fantasy books do. You know, if you read science fiction, for example, then the worlds these people are on are as often as important as the characters themselves, which is brilliant. That's why people they read and consume science fiction, because they have a love of other worlds. This book's not like that either. And I kind of would have loved for it if it had a bit more of a steampunk vibe, but I don't know anything about that either. I just really admire the costumes and I absolutely love them. But because I didn't know enough about the genre, I didn't write it with a steampunk bent either. This world that I've created definitely is a mix of mechanics and magic, but you don't actually see a lot of that. It's more mentioned as a bypass rather than delved into, because this book is about two men who are brought together under a marriage contract. And so I finished it last week. I was really pleased because I had been writing it on and off, as you've known if you've been following my sprint videos on my Lisa's Write channels and things like that. I've probably been writing this for probably a good 2 or 3 months now, I think, picking it up, putting it down, picking it up, putting it down, finishing something else, putting it up, picking it up, blah, 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 doing that. And I really loved the characters, so I didn't want to let it go. And I finished it, and then I thought, well, is there any point in it even being edited? You see, the problem was that I wrote the book because I really loved the characters. The issue was that there's no fated mates, and I write fated mates. There's no furries. There's very little magic. In fact, there really isn't any magic that impacts the story, except a robo spell, but, that's irrelevant. It's like giving somebody a drug at a party. I didn't know where it was going to fit. I didn't know if I could sell it. And that's what brought up the question to me, and why I thought I'd do a video about it now, about why it is so important for you to know your target audience and to know the genre your book is going to be in. I was in conversations with a new author at the beginning. It's actually probably about towards the end of last year. The gentleman and I had become friends. We'd been chatting about books. He was a new author. He'd written this book, and he'd asked me if I'd read it, which I'm more than happy to do because I'm always looking for more reading material. So I had a read of it. And then I said to him, it was one of the first things I said to him was, "Oh, well, what genre is it in?" And he says, "Oh, I don't really know. Maybe you can give me some ideas." So I read it, and the book was about a very powerful woman. Well, she was a very strong woman in a time when women weren't meant to be strong, and she was wandering alone at a time when women weren't meant to do that. So there was like this hint of Wild West woman on her own, but I'm fairly sure the story was set in Australia. She acted against the conventions of the historical times, both in what she wanted to do and how she lived. It wasn't a romance, although at one point he thought, or he suggested, there was a romantic subplot there, but there kind of wasn't, because that wasn't the point. The book was about this woman, and she was beautifully written. It was a really lovely book. But when I tried to think of what sort of genre it could fit into, the only thing I could think of was women's literature. And the reason he needed to know what genre that book was in, was one, for self-classification for Amazon, but also for the cover. If you have a look in any genres on Amazon, the covers for historical novels, for example, are totally different to the covers for women's literature, for example. And then there was a cult and a sort of semi-romance aspect going on in this book. That would have invoked a different cover again. And readers really like to know what they're getting. If I write a paranormal story, then there is a suggestion of it somewhere. It will either be in the title or in the series title, or there'll be a wolf or a bear or something on the cover, or it'll be part of a series that my readers already know is paranormal, because some people don't like reading it. So why on earth would I create the impression I was writing a contemporary book when, in fact, my men turn furry? If readers don't like that, I'm setting them up to refund and give me a negative review. Nobody wants that. So it is really, really important that you know what genre your book is in. And please don't be one of those arty-farty people who think that your book crosses multiple genres. Most books do. But you need to focus on one for the purpose of your marketing, for your cover design, and the way you write your blurb. Because if you don't fit in among the other books of that genre, then rather than float to the top and be amazing, your book will sink like a stone and will not be read unless you have a really, really extensive marketing plan. But yeah, it's knowing the genre of your book helps with all of those aspects that comes to making it a successful book, namely the marketing, the cover, the blurb, and where you put it in, that how you categorize it when you upload it to Amazon's first, in the first instance, because Amazon will ask you to pick two categories. You really need to know what those two categories are, just lumping them in at fiction is pretty much going to guarantee nobody's going to see it at all. So, yeah, it's really important. And it's also important to know your target audience, because your target audience are going to want to go to where they're used to find the books they want to find from you. My issue with the infidelity clause is that my readers are used to finding my paranormal romances. And this one will probably be categorized under fantasy, purely and simply because I sent the book off to 2 dear author friends of mine and said, look, I think this book's going to have to be, what would you call it, serialized on my blog or something, because I can't think how to promote it. I can't, and that was the thing. Without knowing the genre, I didn't know how I was going to, what category, what categories I was going to file it under, how I was going to market it, or what I was going to do about the cover. And fortunately, apparently there's a thing. It's not fantasy romance, it's romance fantasy. And apparently that is a thing. So there you go. Thanks to my friends, my book now has a genre. But that is why it is really important for you to know the genre of your book and to know your target reader. For the infidelity clause, the target reader was me. So I'm just going to hope there's going to have to be an awful lot of, well, hopefully there's enough people like me who enjoy the things I enjoy in my reading to enjoy the story. It was fun to do anyway. But yeah, knowing your readers and knowing who your book is aimed towards is another hugely important thing if you're looking at your book being a success. Fortunately, my Being Loki came out last month, and the infidelity clause will be my June release. And as the wonderful JP Sayle and I have another book coming out in June as well, Todd's story, which has been on pre-order. Yeah, I can afford to put the infidelity clause out, and it doesn't have to do amazingly well, but it would be really nice if it did a little bit well. And who knows, maybe it'll find some new readers in it too. If you were curious about it yourself, have a check back on some of my sprint videos, because during my couple of my sprint videos, I was actually writing the infidelity clause. So there you go. You can actually go and have a read of the screen while I'm typing it and get a sense of what that story is about. So maybe that's what I should do as my marketing efforts. Just show off those sprint videos with people, with me typing the book. Be a novel way of doing a teaser, I imagine, wouldn't it? Anyway, my dear friends, I have waffled on enough about this. Enough, basically the crux of this video is, yes, you need to know the genre of your book before you self-publish it, because knowing the genre of your book affects your cover, your blurb, and who and how you market it. Who you market it to and how. So yes, it's vitally important, and knowing your readers is equally important for the same reasons. Your readers will be looking for a specific type of cover in a specific genre. They will be looking for have certain expectations about the blurb, and they'll be having certain expectations about the content too. So make sure you are fully aware of those things before you self-publish your wonderfully finished book. And if this was helpful, please hit the like and subscribe button, because that lets YouTube know that somebody thought this wasn't that bad. I mean, face it, even if you were laughing at me, it doesn't matter. If you thought that was okay, click the like and subscribe and let other people do the same. And it's Pride Month. And I always think that that's really cool, especially because I'm an older woman, and so I can appreciate how hard the slog had been for the LGBTQI community. I've been a gay ally since the 80s, and yeah, that was an interesting time. But anyway, my friends, I am digressing, and you probably have things to do, like writing your book. So if you have any comments or questions, please pop them down below, because I do my best to answer everyone. In fact, I do make a point of answering everyone. And hug the ones you love, my friends, and we'll catch you in the next video. Bye.